Today's guest on Only Human is Brady Edwards. Brady and I talk about how hyper efficiency in games like Runescape affected our day to day outside of the game, getting treated for anxiety and depression, getting new viewpoints after moving away from home, and the false existence of linear progression. Enjoy the podcast. So what's going on, Brady? How are you?
Hey man, I'm good. It's been a while. We actually haven't spoken in like in person, like face to face in a while. I know we've kept up over text and like sending each other memes. But yeah, this is probably the first time we talked, and I didn't even have your new Discord, so
Yeah, that's true. Dude, I think the last time
yeah,
we actually met in person was at Kepner's, and
yeah,
that was a blast. Yeah.
yeah. Was
So,
that and that would have been like 2 years ago.
yeah,
Wednesday before Thanksgiving, before the pandemic, the one before that actually maybe.
yeah. So it's been a
Yeah,
minute for sure.
it has been a while. Yeah.
So, what are you up to now out of Hudson?
So I'm in Chicago. I moved here close to 3 years ago now. It'll be 3 years next month. I've been working at the same place. I just work like downtown, live downtown. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Okay. Um,
Definitely a cool city. Definitely nice to get a different experience than like growing up in Hudson. You
oh,
know?
for sure. Yeah, we should definitely get into that.
Yeah,
So that might even
absolutely.
tie into my question that I texted you before this, and
Yeah,
the question that I would like an answer to is, what event led you to your biggest personal revelation?
yeah. So definitely I mean, not moving out of Hudson per se. Like Hudson was like great, like whatever. We grew up there, had a good time. But it's like very narrow minded, I would say, in the way people view things and the way um that everything there is like set up. Like I think I saw a statistic somewhere, it's like 92% of people in Hudson are white, and the majority are most likely from the same like socioeconomic background. Um, and that's fucking wild. That's such like a like there's a reason they call it the bubble, right? That's such a small like subset of people in the United States, and it's such like a it's not a very common one either.
Mm,
But like if that's all you grew up around and that's all you knew, then like it can be like really shocking to like get a different worldview from other places. Um, so I went to IU for 4 years after high school, Indiana University, and I hung out with like very similar people to like what we grew up with. Maybe like a little different, but definitely like very similar type people, like frat bros, like that type of person, you know.
yeah.
Uh, so uh, so yeah, it was good. But my big change and like my biggest what was the word you used? Revelation
Revelation. Yeah.
was definitely when I moved actually to Chicago. Because it's the first like big city I've lived in. I don't have any family here. I have no actually background experience here. I just literally got hired here out of college and was like, yeah, that's like I was like I've always wanted to live in a city. I've always wanted to try out urban life. Like I think I'd fit very well into there. And it's been great so far. And I think the biggest part about moving here that has like impacted my life has been working at such a diverse company, but not even that, but like also just Chicago's a hub for the Midwest, and
Mm,
you get to meet so many different people from so many different backgrounds. Whereas like in Hudson, if you met someone that was like from a different background, honestly, that person was like kind of shunned. It was weird, right? Like
yeah.
nobody, like everybody was all set in their ways. Everybody wanted to like do what they've been doing for the rest of their life, and that was like a huge mindset I had to shake when I moved here because I was like, I am a super like people are not gonna like me if I keep acting like the way that we like grew up, right?
Yeah.
Like it's very ignorant and very like narrow minded. So moving out here is like literally taught me so much about so many different cultures and like so many people from different backgrounds, like people of different from different races, different ethnicities, and like learning about their home life and like their upbringing. Like for example, one of my best friends here is actually from Ghana,
Okay.
and just like having like talking to him about like his different experiences he's had growing up as opposed to like my like cookie cutter like Midwest American lifestyle is like it's so eye opening, and it really makes you see the world in a different way.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
I would like to say that I don't think that I've really shaked uh, that come up. I would say because I think at John Carroll there
Yeah.
definitely were a lot of people from foreign exchange students out of the country, and
Mhm.
I got a different worldview and everything. But I haven't really been around people who had like a really different lifestyle than I have, or like who came up from like a very, very,
Mhm.
very different culture. So, like I'm interested to hear if there was a story in particular from that friend, or just if there was one thing that comes to mind in terms of like a moment in isolation where you actually had the conscious thought, like, wow, like this is not Hudson anymore.
Yeah. I guess let me think, because I wasn't trying to like talk shit on people from Hudson, by the way, who like
No, I didn't think
never
about it.
shook that mindset. For me, it was mostly just like when I was growing up and when I was first like not growing up, but like I would say in college is where I started to kind of realize some things. Then like when I moved here, kind of solidified them. I really only ever thought like how things would affect me and how things would like affect my family and how things would like affect my friends, right? And it's just at a much greater scale, like in terms of like political agendas and like like what these like a lot of politicians are doing. Like we don't have to get too political, but I can't have friends from like from Ghana or friends that are like from India or have families like across the world, and to see like some of these politicians like enacting certain policies to like actively suppress them and actively like restrict, like I know like when Trump got elected, right? um I knew like people at school and people at work who like hadn't seen their family in years because they couldn't leave the country, because if they tried to come back they would get locked out and their entire life would be uprooted. And that's just like stuff uh that I don't think a lot of people think about from where we grew up, right?
Right,
Because again, like nobody is really in Hudson is from like out of the country. Nobody has those struggles. It's all these people, a lot of them born and raised in Hudson, if not probably came from like another Midwest town nearby or even stayed in Ohio, right?
right,
So there's a lot of stuff that you see at like a macro level that you wouldn't necessarily think about based on your upbringing because you've never been exposed to like different scenarios or different situations that people have experienced.
for
Does
sure.
that make sense?
Yes. Um, I want to go into a little bit about what you view the Hudson culture as, because I know a little bit before the podcast, before we started recording, we
Yeah.
talked about the like how streamlined it is and like the
Mhm.
expectations. So can you like recap what we talked about before the podcast, and just talk about like the Hudson culture and why you think that it might breed like burnout?
Yeah, for sure, man. And this is something I struggled with until recently, even though I wasn't like in high school I wasn't necessarily like a straight A student. Like I graduated with like a 3.7 or something, which is good. But there are kids out in Hudson graduating with like 5.3 GPAs, like literally getting A pluses 100% in all AP classes, right?
Right.
And I think that there's like this level of competition in Hudson that you don't see anywhere else for like, in my opinion, for no reason. Like,
Hmm.
I feel like, I mean, it probably breeds like good habits to like be on top of that, but I know so many people who have like had like breakdowns and like freaked out. And even I struggled with this in college. Like if I didn't understand a concept in one of my classes at like a higher education place, I had this feeling that I was like never going to amount to anything or never be able to
Same.
like achieve my goals because I couldn't solve a fucking calculus problem, right?
Yeah.
Like I like one problem on my entire homework set, I'd like have a meltdown.
Yep.
And I think that it's like the competition there is just so steep, uh, and it's like, I mean, it's a great public school, right? It's a great public school, but at the end of the day, I think the administration pretty much only cares about their numbers. You just see these kids like they'll like my sister, for example, she's a perfect example, right? My youngest sister Lily, she just turned 19. She just got into Michigan University, like amazing school, definitely the smartest out of all the siblings. Um, but I just remember one time she came home with her report card when she was like 16, and she got a B plus instead of an A, and she like threw a fit and started crying. Like, and that's like the perfect example of like that toxicity at Hudson, right? Because at the
Mm,
end of the day, like B plus or an A minus isn't going to keep you out of college
right.
it's like unless it's like you're doing that like consistently or like you have other problems going on, right? Like if you're
Right.
like not getting good grades on top of that, like what is that, like a point 0.3 difference in your GPA, but like averaged out over 4 years? That's
Yep.
nothing.
Yeah.
That's literally nothing. Um, and like on top, like I don't know, like Ivy League schools and stuff, like you're not gonna get it on grades alone, right? You need to have
Yeah.
some other extracurriculars going on. Um, so it's just like a really weird mindset to me. And I think it breeds like this thought that like you need to be the top of the top forever. Like like
Yeah.
and at Hudson that's like easy to do because it's like what 400 people in a class, but you get sent to like so for example, I forget who it was. I don't want to name drop anyone, but I just remember someone being like super super like top of our class, like my class, and they got into an Ivy League school, went to the Ivy League school, were like exceptionally average and like really struggled because it was so hard
Yeah.
and just like pretty sure they had like a fucking mental breakdown and had to transfer back home because they couldn't keep up with like the other like actual geniuses,
Mm,
you know?
yep.
Like it's tough, man. It's really tough.
Yeah. Before you continue,
Yeah.
I just want to say that I see the same thing, and I know that there is, and again, I won't name drop, but there was some person in our class too who had one school in mind, and that ended up being the only school that he couldn't get into, and like, there's only so much you can do, and
Yeah.
like from being that young and like I don't know with that like obviously there's reasons why that like is like a healthy environment for to a certain extent, but I don't know, like I see a lot like the most successful people out of high school, like as an 18-year-old, I know a lot of them had a lot of like periods where they hit that burnout point. But I know people who just like went to Miami or just went to John Carroll, like they were chilling and they do really well
Exactly.
for themselves now, like career wise. It's way bigger than the school you go to, which is something that they don't stress enough at all, I feel like. Because people, it's
Mhm.
all about the grades you get, and then it's all about whether you get like the honors diploma, which I'm pretty sure doesn't make any difference at all, because like you already get accepted before you even get your honors diploma.
Right.
And then yeah, like it doesn't even matter what sort of school you go to. Even like Kent State, like some of the most like some of my mentors who are like extremely successful and like they keep a low profile, like they all went to Kent State.
Yeah.
And
Dude,
like
that's a good point that you brought that up because Kent State gets a bad rep just because it's close to Hudson probably.
yeah.
But like there's some really fucking good programs and some of like the smartest people I know graduated from Kent State.
Oh
Like
yeah.
that like that's it's like a good school.
Yeah, so I
I
have
think it
no
just
idea
gets
why they
a
did
bad rep
that.
because like what?
I think it's like yeah, I don't know either. It
I think
has
it's
to
a
be like a
great school.
status thing. Like I don't know.
It's got to be a status thing, dude. Like it's that Hudson like because everybody wants to get out of Hudson or whatever.
Mhm.
But then everybody always ends up living in Ohio for the rest of their lives. Like no offense to anybody who's still living in Ohio, but like nobody wants to get out.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And so it's funny that you said the thing about like hitting that point because when in Hudson, and I said this like as a personal experience, but now that you say this, like it seems like it's much more common than I think. Is that I was like extremely scared of failure going into college, where
Yeah.
like I like the first time that I ever had a panic attack was when it was like I think it was like the first night after my first day of classes when I was like, oh, this is college. This is the real deal. If I mess up one time, then like everything's gonna like go in the shitter and like that's it. And that was the first night I had a panic attack, and that was when like I didn't really like think about any actionable changes to my mindset or my belief system at that point. But then that was like the
Yeah.
first indication that like something's not right here, because this like I can't
Yeah.
react like this to adversity, whatever you want to call it, in that sense. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, that's like super tough, man. It's good that you realize that though because it took me until literally like a year or two ago to understand that I had like any mental health issues. I just thought like this is how people are. Like this is how you have to live on day-to-day life, like, and everybody just like fucking like hates it. It sucks, right? Like
Right.
like
Like this
like
is the
oh
way she
this,
goes.
like oh I'm gonna go out and have to walk in a crowd of people and I'm gonna be sweating the whole time because I'm anxious as fuck. And I did not understand that that's like not how you're supposed to live your life.
Right,
You
dude.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you if you're willing to go into this, like
Yeah.
what was it like to hit, because I'll I'll wager up my own experience, and if you feel comfortable
Sure.
you can share yours. But yeah, like I felt the same sort of thing too, where in high school I was totally indifferent when it came to like anxiety. Like I didn't really know what anxiety was. I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, like I knew that I had like some form of seasonal depression, but again, it wasn't like I needed medication for it. It was more of a buzzword to me personally. Like I was like, I feel this way consistently throughout the winters and I have low energy and I don't want to get out of bed, but like it really wasn't that big of a deal. And then once you become like an adult at college where it really starts to affect everything you're doing, that was when it sort of raised a question for me personally. And I was like, I don't think like this can't be right, because there's no way that everyone feels this way behind closed doors, but no one talks about it.
Right.
And so I mentioned that I had that panic attack my my first day, or one of my first days of my freshman year. But um my senior year, it was like a month before I graduated, and I was hitting this point where I said that like I really don't know what I want to do after college, and sort of like I think it's a byproduct from Hudson. Not to blame all of my problems on my Hudson career, because that's not the case. It's just a very, lazy way of framing it. But
Yeah.
I never snapped out of it. Like I never hit a point where I was like, okay, I need to recalibrate. I was basically on that like streamlined path where I was like, I'm in high school, now I'm in college, and once I'm in college, I'm gonna get a job. But I realized like the last month of college, when like I had no other choice, I was like, oh, I actually do need to find out what I want to do
Yeah.
for the rest of my life. And so I had no idea. And I had a lot of thoughts about my major, and I said that I don't even know if I want to use my major for a career at all. Like I liked my major, was chemistry, but I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna, if this is something that I want to do for a career. And so I remember I went to my biochem class sometime in late April, and um I was taking this quiz, and I was feeling that same panic attack that I had the first day, or one of the first days of my freshman year. And I just walked up and left, and I emailed my professor, and I was like, hey, like I was pretty sure I was about to have a panic attack. So I left. And what was really cool was that she emailed me back, and she like sort of validated, like she acknowledged that like anxiety is a real thing, which also sort of helped me out, and like
Yeah.
to make me respect it more and like acknowledge it seriously. And so I was like, okay. So the next day, that was like on a Monday, and then on a Wednesday, that was like when that next lecture was. And I'm in the class before, and I'm sitting there, and it was a philosophy of law class, and Nick Weber, who was the first ever podcast guest here, was sitting next to me, and that anxiety was building up for no reason. And it was just like, anxiety like manifested through your body at random points. Like you can never like pin it in a moment, because usually for me at
Yeah.
least, like it was like a culmination of everything that going on at once. And then it sort of happens like on an unconscious level where you can't even ID
Yeah.
like a certain like trigger, right?
Yeah. And then the next thing you know, you're like where the fuck, like where am I? What's
Yeah.
going on?
So
Like
for
you gotta get out of here. You gotta like book it home. Yeah.
yeah, so for
I
me
get
it
that.
was like I was having like tunnel vision, and I was sweating, and like my
Yeah.
throat was closing up, and I was like, this is definitely anxiety, this is definitely a panic attack. But I was like, what happens if I go home, like if I leave this class right now? I just had a feeling that it would get worse. And I was like, I feel like I should try my best to like sit here and then, go to the next class. So I'm sitting there thinking that like maybe just me saying that would give me the strength to just snap out of it. But as I said that, it just got worse and worse and worse. And I'm like, oh shit, I should have
That's
left.
all you're thinking about now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you're just like totally.
Because you're like okay, it's like 45 minutes until I can get home, right? And then it's like I'm good, And then but then because you're paying attention to it, it's like it feels like it's lasting so long.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so for me, I was like trying to fight it. It was like on top of like paying attention to it, it was like, I'm not going to feel this. So eventually when I was just like, okay, like it was the moment where I was like, if I'm going to pass out in class, like I have no control over it. The moment I
Yeah.
thought that, that's when it went away like instantly. So I was like, interesting. So I go to my next class and everything was fine. But like the next days, like I had to like continue to like do that over and over again. But yeah, so that's when I learned like that was probably the moment where I was like, I don't want to have to deal with this on a day-to-day basis, and it's time to like figure out what's going on behind the
Yeah.
scenes. And yeah, it's like a daily thing, and one of the things that I've like I'm starting to realize is that like it doesn't need to be like debilitating, but I don't think it'll ever completely go away. And that's one of the things that like you sort of need to
Yeah.
accept at some point. It's like it's gonna be there. Like it sort of helps the acceptance process, to be completely honest, knowing that it won't ever go away. So like it might help to just start
Yeah.
accepting it as early on as possible. But that was basically my experience in acknowledging my own mental health and how I needed to manage that. And like before I end the story, one of the biggest proponents to my anxiety is that I used to drink like 3 energy drinks a day, and I had to stop doing that because that only accelerated it. But
I used to
yeah,
drink a ton of coffee every morning. I mean, I still do drink a ton of coffee, but like not as much. Like I'm
yeah.
I'm more mindful of my caffeine intake, but that for sure, like especially if you don't eat something, like
Oh yeah,
yeah.
that'll
Oh
do a
yeah.
number.
um yeah, man, I'll share my experience with that as well. So well, I already told you that like my anxiety. So it's actually like I have like a generalized anxiety disorder is what I am like diagnosed with. But it's more of like speaking with my therapist, we found it's more of like a social anxiety. Um, but it's probably just general anxiety, right? So I explained to you earlier that like I became obsessed with like hyper efficiency.
Mm,
And like kind of like that mindset from high school, like everything had to be done immediately, like on time, perfectly, no room for error, right? And we also shared our experience with like it's so wild that it came up to this, but like us playing RuneScape, right?
yes.
Like because it's like such a grind, and because if you're wasting like I don't know, like if you're like 33% less efficient in that game, because like your goal takes you like 300 hours, it's really
Mm.
taking 400 hours instead of 300 hours if you're
Yeah.
not like maximizing your clicks or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Which is one of the big reasons why I had to stop playing it is because I became, and you like you said, you had a really good point when we were talking earlier, about how it's super easy to nail down that efficiency and see those numbers fly
Yes.
because it's in such a controlled environment, like a video game, and it's like literally just code, like it's a script
Right.
that runs, like if you do this, then this, um, and that efficiency is like not really present in the real world. So I think I mentioned earlier on the podcast that I would like I had like a breakdown if I couldn't understand my homework in college, and like eventually I'd figure it out and feel really dumb. But like at the time I'd just be like, "Yo, this sucks. Like how am I can't even do homework. How am I ever gonna succeed like after college? Like at a real job? How am I ever gonna do this?" That would be like my mindset. Um, but then going past that, after college, graduated, whatever, got a new job. Well, not new job, first job. And I realized that like I still had that mindset, but at the same time, like it's the same thing with school, with like RuneScape being like that little like controlled environment.
Mm.
School is the same way, right? Because I think every class except for my capstone class, but even then it was still like structured in a way where you had to do stuff that they want you to do. But like in school, you're solving a problem that's already solved.
Right.
Whereas like with my job, if I'm working on a project, like on my project team, we are like solving a problem that nobody knows the answer to. And whatever you come up with is the way that that has to be. And it might not be the most efficient way, but if it works, doesn't matter.
Right.
Um, like as long as it's not like super inefficient, as long as you're still hitting the deadline, that's great, man. Like it doesn't need to, you don't need to save like ticks or like 3 frames or anything with in real life, right? And chances are it might be the best way that anybody could come up with, right? You don't
Right.
know that. There's no answer. There's no solution. You can't speed run life, right?
Right.
So I keep bringing it back to video games, but it's kind of like the same mentality.
Oh yeah.
Um but yeah, man, my experience with anxiety, I knew like those breakdowns in like retrospect at school were like definitely panic attacks.
Mm.
But I didn't really take mental health seriously until like a year or two ago.
Okay.
Um, when I was at work, and it was like super early in the morning. Again, like drank coffee, empty stomach, just like going turbo. I was walking to a meeting, and I forget like what happened, but I would like I said hi to someone like the wrong like I thought it was like the wrong way. I like didn't say it like the way I thought I said it in my head,
Mm.
and then I think they kind of like chuckled a little bit because like a little awkward, right?
Yeah.
I thought about that all day, right? And I remember being in my meeting that I was walking to, just sitting there like, and I remember people like ask me questions. I'd be like, "Oh, sorry, can you repeat that?" Like this is like an in-person meeting, like wait, like before coronavirus and everything was on Zoom, right?
Yeah.
And like man, I just remember I left the meeting. I went to a conference room and called my boss, and I was like, "Hey man, like I don't know what's going on right now. I think I'm having a panic attack. Like I don't know what's going on. I'm super anxious. I'm like shaking. Like what the hell is going on? Like I was like, can I go home and like work the rest of the day from home? Like just see it out, whatever." And he's like, "Oh yeah." He's like, "You're definitely having a panic attack. Like I have anxiety. Like getting that validation, I think actually kind of helped me to like
That's huge.
pinpoint it and seek help. And like him being so cool about it, um, was like super eye opening for me. And luckily like my doctor's office is in the bottom of my work building,
That's
so
awesome.
on my way out I just walked down and I was like, "Hey, I need to see the doctor, like whenever he's next available, like tomorrow or the day after, whatever."
Mm.
Went in, talked about it. He's like, "Yeah, it sounds like you have anxiety." And like we walked through like our options, like what kind of medication I would either start taking. I didn't know if it was like a big deal at first, so I didn't do an SSRI or anything. But I just had like as needed like lorazepam tablets. So like if I was having a panic attack, I could calm down.
Right.
And that was at a point where like my anxiety was really bad and I didn't even know because I didn't know it was anxiety and I thought people were just
Oh, that's
like
interesting.
that.
Okay.
Yeah. And then once I realized like after taking the first tablet and like understanding like, wow, is this how like people feel normally?
Yeah.
Uh, I was like, what the hell? So then he strongly recommended therapy. Started going to therapy, and that like changed my life. Just talking to someone who not like you can talk to your friends and be like, oh, yo, this sucks, or like, oh, I don't know why I'm feeling this way. I'm feeling sad today, or like call your mom or something, right?
Mm.
And they can like sympathize with you. They can talk back to you. They can share shared experiences with you. But they can't give you the next steps to like process. Okay, well, let me ask you this question. Why do you think you're feeling like that? Do you think that you feel like this because of this past event that I have down in my notes that you talked about three
Right.
weeks ago? Like they don't have that skill set to like build on it, and it kind of helps you like perceive everything about like your life in a way that like you built up to be this like anxious mess, right?
Yes. Yeah.
um so that was like my big like defining moment where I really started taking mental health seriously. And like I've encouraged like a lot of my friends to, even if like they don't think that they have like anxiety or they're depressed, like at least see a therapist. I think everybody should
Yes.
do therapy. I think everybody should go at least for one session and just see like how it works, because I think it can be really helpful. Especially like it's really good at bringing you back from like those bad days. I remember
Oh
my
yeah.
first session, I laid everything out on the table. My therapist is like, "Yo, like usually it takes people a couple weeks to like open up," and I'm like, "Oh," I was like, "Oh no, we're getting to like the bottom. It's been too long.
Yeah.
Like I'm telling you my life story. I'm telling you what I think is wrong, and I want you to tell me what you think is wrong." But I remember after that session, like airing all my dirty laundry, I
Mm.
came home and I literally just stared at the wall for like 15 minutes because I had to like bring up everything that has ever happened in my life
Right.
that like I didn't even think about could be tied to what I was feeling, right?
Yes.
Um, and honestly, this is kind of like a weird thing that happened to me too. Is I did try an SSRI after, so during the pandemic, my anxiety got pretty bad, and I was like super depressed because I was isolated for like like in Chicago, our lockdown was literally 3 months, and I
Oh
like
wow.
wasn't allowed to go anywhere except for the grocery store. So I was like, and then I remember I went to see my family, uh, and I had a full on like mental breakdown because I did not know how to act in public. I did not know how to interact with people anymore. It had been literally 3 months since I had talked to anybody except for my roommate and
Wow.
maybe like some of our close friends.
Okay.
Uh, and that was when I decided like maybe I should try this SSRI because it's clear that like even though I'm making progress in therapy, like this isn't going anywhere, and this helps like. So I was on Zoloft for like a month, uh, and what it does is I don't know. You said you were on something, right? Like a
Wellbutrin. I
your
was on
Wellbutrin.
Wellbutrin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you mentioned that during the podcast or if
Oh, good
it was
call. Yeah.
before. I didn't want to bring it up. But so like what SSRIs are for anybody who doesn't understand and is watching this is it's like a daily pill you take that gives you it basically like messes with the chemicals in your brain to like kind of neutralize like like depressive episodes and like anxious episodes, and you're still going to have anxiety. The way it was described to me is like if you're constantly like bouncing all like super anxious, not anxious, like all over the place, what this does is kind of helps you like maintain it at more of like an even level for longer periods of time. uh but there are a lot of side effects to it. And a lot of those side effects can be taking you from going like this to going like this all the time.
Hmm.
And that is what happened to me. I took it for about 3 weeks. I woke up every morning with like suicidal ideation.
Oh wow.
And but I knew it was the meds because
Right.
I had never been like that bad before. So I was
Okay.
like, this is definitely like this. But I know you also have to be on it for like a month before it starts doing anything.
Yeah, which is the
Um,
double-edged sword
yeah,
part. Or
I
yeah.
like couldn't go outside because I was too anxious to like do anything. When I would have drinks with like my friends or like my roommate, I would just get hammered off of like 2 beers and that would made it worse because then I'd like black out off of like 2 White Claws and just worry about what I did the entire night, right? Like I
Right.
don't know if I acted like an ass. I don't know what I said to people. It was like it was so bad. It was really really bad. Um, and I think that also put into perspective for me, and that was kind of an eye opening uh experience for me with anxiety, which I did talk to my doctor about this, and he was like, "Yeah, that wasn't the goal, but like at least you got something from it," because he knew how like I told him I had literally if you go on WebMD and search the side effects of Zoloft, I literally had every side effect except I was worried about two, right? Because I
Mm.
do like bodybuilding, like weightlifting stuff, so I was worried about weight gain, and then I was worried about losing my sex drive. And
Mm.
those are the only two I didn't experience, but I experienced the entire list besides that,
Wow.
which is
That's
crazy
wild.
because that's like so ironic, right?
Yeah.
Because there's the two things I was so worried about, and then I had horrible headaches. I couldn't sleep at night. I was nauseous 24/7. Like I was way more anxious. I was way more depressed. Like I was so unstable, and I was like, damn, like this sucks. But it did put
Wow.
into perspective like how. So I went off of it obviously, and I'm a lot better now.
Nice.
That was a while ago. That was almost a year ago now. But
Okay.
it did kind of put into perspective like how uh how bad it could have been,
Oh yeah.
right? Like as someone who I have personally decided, and I think my doctors agree with me, I will not try an SSRI again unless something like traumatic happens in my life,
Mm.
probably, where I'm gonna like need it. Uh, I just don't think I'm like built for it, you know.
Yeah.
And I was doing fine with like the therapy and like the as needed medication for a really long time. So I think that like that is like my path on that.
I see.
Um,
Um.
yeah,
Sorry.
go
Were you
ahead.
finished?
Sorry. No, no, I'm done. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So like the first thing that I want to just like wrote back to I have it all listed out here, so I'm gonna jump back a little bit further than probably expected. But the whole RuneScape thing, I just want to explain is that yeah, like this is
Oh,
something
yeah.
that the same exact thing happened to me, and like just for anyone who hasn't played RuneScape, RuneScape is an MMORPG, and so it's a game where you build up a character. Your character has skills, and you can level up by like using the skills and doing quests and all that. But the game has certain elements in it where you can do things on certain timers. So you can like plant trees for your farming skills, and like it'll take like an hour or 12 hours. And then, the game has certain, it maximizes certain XP rates. So you can only gain XP at like a maximum, but you can go as low as, a certain number. And so the game, once you get to play it and once you like start having a lot of fun with it, is that you start to look at how you can maximize your efficiency and how you can level up as fast as possible, how you can make as much money as possible. So in the game, that there is things called dailies. So there are things that reset every single day. And so for me, one of the biggest issues was that I had to do my dailies at a certain time every day, and I had to do them like in a row. So like there was always like an hour of my day at a certain time where I did my dailies. And even my friends who had no idea what RuneScape is, they understood what dailies were by like, at least within like a week of us hanging out, because they're like, CK's got to do his dailies before he comes and hangs out. And that was sort of one of the things too, where like they didn't like look down on me for doing that because they just knew that I liked the game. But like that was like, I can't, I'm pushing people outside of my schedule so I can do these fucking dailies in a video game at the end of the day.
It becomes unhealthy because you build your life around it,
Yeah.
Like you literally are sacrificing things to like be as efficient as possible for some pixels.
Literally for some pixels. And so that efficiency thing, it was like every single time I played the game, like I'll speak for myself, and I'm sure you relate, is that back in the day when I like initially like loved that game back in like 2006, 2007.
You're killing goblins in the lumber swamp, dude. You don't care about efficiency.
Right. And like you're just with your friends, like after school, like on the bus ride home, like, are you gonna get on RuneScape today? Like what world, where can we meet? Like that was that. And then you guys had a blast listening to music, just like walking around. But for like me now, again, I'll speak for myself, is that at that point where I was like, in order for me to have fun and to make it worth playing, like my time needs to be worth it, is for me to have like perfect execution when I play this game, which is totally against what a leisurely activity or like doing something for pleasure is all about. And so like that hyper efficiency leaked into my weight loss. So when I was trying to lose weight, it was like I can't have like, it got to the point where I was even pushing like 10 or less calories. Like that was my uncertainty. I was like, at the end of the day, like I want to hit like 1200 calories. If I hit like 1210, like I have to go and do like, I was considering doing things like I have to go walk around like school one time. And that was like, it was just getting way too bad. So like in terms of your story, like I can completely relate when it comes down to even your leisurely activities, when you're trying to execute at your proficiency at something at that level on a video game, like that's when like for me it was like I need to step away and try that. And so it was leaking into everything, like outside of RuneScape. It was going to like even like sleep, which makes no sense at all because sleep is like a spontaneous thing, and obviously you can do things to maximize your sleep. But it was like, if I don't get 8 hours of sleep, I'm gonna do this and the other thing, so it was a lot. And so yeah, that's my relation to RuneScape. But to go into Wellbutrin, is that Wellbutrin for me was, I got into it. I was never medicated for anxiety or depression because I never thought it got that bad. But I got on Wellbutrin when I was not interested in video games anymore, which is like also a funny thing because I thought it was a symptom of depression. And I think nowadays, looking back on it, is that I thought at the time I wasn't interested in anything period anymore, but really it was just, I wasn't interested in playing video games at a high level anymore because it was so exhausting. So I got on Wellbutrin, and Wellbutrin is on an SSRI. I think it works on dopamine receptors, but basically what it does is around the same utility as the SSRI, where your mood can go up and down like you said, but what it does is that it elevates your baseline so you feel like generally better, and then those swings of up and downs are much more small. So for me, life was good. Like I was chilling for the most part. I was starting to get more interested in things because that baseline level of dopamine was higher. But it felt at a certain point that like I was just like in a claustrophobic, like stuffy room mentally, if that makes any sense. So it was like I could always tell that I was on it. It was like wearing like a piece of clothing that was a little bit too tight, so you can never actually forget that you're wearing it. It was like that. So I know that Wellbutrin works a lot for people, but that was my case. And Wellbutrin made me start losing a lot of my hair. So I've been off of Wellbutrin for a month and a half now. So like my hair is starting to come back, but my hair, like I was going like basically bald. It was scaring the shit out of me. And my doctor didn't say anything. So I had to go on Reddit and I was like, does Wellbutrin cause hair loss? And then there was like pages and pages of posts of like, I'm 20 years old, I'm a dude, I'm losing my hair. And I'm like, so I stopped like instantly. And so also, I mean, I'm not sure if you like have came to this point or what your outlook is, but there's a certain amount of negative emotion that doesn't need to be avoided or pushed away. Like there's a certain amount of necessary negative emotion that is
Yeah.
meant to be digested. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
I agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's definitely a good mindset. I mean, because you can't, dude. I mean, if you're having like only good days, like you're probably like a sociopath or a psychopath or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, everybody has bad days. Like, you can't just go through life and just win after win after win after win. If you did, you just put like all your money on fucking black on a roulette table and just keep it rolling and become like the world's quickest billionaire.
Right.
Like, it's you can't win them all. You can't win them all.
Yeah. That's it.
You have to. There's bad days. There's good days. Like, life's a roller coaster, man.
Yeah. And I
And
sorry, go on.
oh, I was just say without like you get to those high points from like climbing up from the low points. You know.
Right. And it gives each other like the context, like like appreciating the high points is because
Yeah.
you came from these low points.
Yeah. I think I have a bigger appreciation for like if I have like a really good day, I can sit down at the end of the day and be like, wow, dude, like today was literally a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, because back in the day, like in fifth grade, and like I had a good day and I felt like super grounded and everything, like that was
Yeah.
just like a day for me. But now if I have like a day like that where like I'm out in nature and like I come home and I'm relaxed and everything, I'm like, dude, today was literally a movie. And I can actually appreciate that in context now. I'm like, wow.
Like, bro, what's your favorite movie last night, bro?
Dude, that's what I'm saying. So like maybe like I feel like there's a part of life where like you have to come to grips with that sort of conflict because there's like
Yeah.
a reclamation where like you actually go back and you can actually view everything in that light. So if you're watching right now and you're like particularly interested in this conversation, I feel like watching Katie Marquez's first episode. She talks about her therapy experience and she talks about a very similar story about she talks about how she came to grips with it, how it came, and what she is doing now. So that's a very interesting episode. But so yeah, like for Wellbutrin and for Zoloft, there are a lot of like super spooky side effects that are like, when I say super spooky, like it sounds like I'm memeing, but like they are like genuinely terrifying. So for you, like with your suicidal ideation and waking up in the morning, like I totally believe that because
And that totally passed, by the way. That's like not normal for me, and that's
oh
why I
yeah
was concerned about the medication because I was like, this is literally the worst side effect you can have. And I
yeah
had to have that conversation with my doctor and be like, listen, you don't have to send me to like a hospital. I
right
know it is like I've never thought like this before. It's
right
definitely the medication.
yeah
Like it
that's
100% is. Weaned me off of it, and I was good to go.
so that's why like yeah, treading carefully when it comes to that sort of stuff is, and obviously Brady and I aren't medical professionals, so this is just
Yeah, this is not
storytelling.
medical advice. Yeah,
So
this is personal experience.
yeah, so but yeah, so and also I think there's a study out there, and I should probably take the time to go and find it and post it, but I think it said that antidepressants account for I think 19% of all of actually aiding depression cases. So like there's like, I mean, this isn't exactly what the study is saying because this is just me making the relation, but I would say in general, depression is usually congruent with like world events. So, like for you, you said like it got worse, like your anxiety got worse when the pandemic happened, and
Yeah,
it's
because I
like
was
that
afraid
makes
of the
sense.
air, dude.
Right, exactly. So it's like that is totally reasonable. It's not like you have anything wrong with you. It's like that's
Yeah.
congruent with reality. So, SSRIs and stuff are meant to correct like a chemical imbalance. So, obviously there are things that you can do way before medication to try to correct your depression.
Is that a segue into what I wanted to talk about?
Let's do
All right.
it.
I wanted to talk about how like working out and everything basically like is probably the reason. Well, okay, so it's a double-edged sword because I feel like it's probably the reason why I didn't understand that I was like I had a mental illness. Because literally just going out and working out is like so meditative for me. Like it sucks at first, right? It really sucks at first. Like you're anxious, you think everybody's looking at you. Uh, Nobody's looking at you. Everybody is just there to do their own shit and get out. The only time anybody is looking at you is if they think that you're hot,
Yeah.
guy or girl. Like that's literally the only time. Uh, or unless you're like fucking up something really bad, and hopefully at that point someone who knows what they're doing will come over and be like, hey, just so you know, like you're gonna get really hurt if you do that. Do it this way.
Yeah.
And I'm not condoning offering unsolicited advice at the gym, but you got to look out for your homies, you
Oh yeah.
know. But no, man, I think it's one of the most fair things in life, right? And well, before we get into that, the endorphins are like insane. Like you
Yeah.
go crush a good workout, even if you're having a horrible day, you don't even want to go. The hardest part is getting up and going out and getting in the gym. Once you're in the gym, that's my advice for anybody who wants to start out, by the way, is your goal should be to go to the gym. You
Yeah.
don't need to do anything. Just go. All you have to do, maybe sit in the lobby like 5 minutes. You can head home if you don't want to. But once you're there, man, and you want to do stuff.
Right.
And at a certain point, like you get to enjoy it. And I know it's not for everybody, right? A lot of people, you got to find what you like, right? Like for some people, it's like hiking outdoors. Like for me personally, like I like to move heavy weight. I think that's super cool, and I'm really good at it. From my perspective, right? Like it's something I'm really good at, and I feel pride in when I do it. Um, but it's good for you. You feel good. Your health becomes better, which increases your quality of life. When you're working out too, like you did something that was maybe like a challenge for you, and you feel like you can do anything. So maybe you'll take that momentum and like go get some shit done that you've been putting off for like 3 weeks that only takes 10 minutes, but you just don't want to start it because I don't know, probably anxiety, right?
Mm.
Um, but it's just one of those things where like everybody should like at a certain point it becomes like a part of your day, like brushing your teeth, right? Like
Right.
I have like after work, close my laptop, go to the gym, uh, and that has like helped me. Like actually, that took me out of like a super depressive episode in college when I was still like not understanding my mental health, but I would like go out and like I was using like alcohol to basically like avoid that.
Mm.
But not like drinking alone. Like I would just like wake up, go to class, and then like wait until like we were going out because we went to a party school. So like literally we went out every single night. I realized like that was like not a good way to live my life. So I've been working out since I was like 18. But
Okay.
when I turned 21, I took off like 3-4 months because I was just like partying all the time,
Mm.
and it's like kind of hard to work out when you're hungover.
Yeah.
Uh, but once I started up again, it was like a completely different world. Like got my shit together, got my new job, like everything.
Right.
Uh, I'm kind of rambling on this point, but
Go for it. It's a movie.
so what the original point I was trying to make was that uh I don't think I understood I had mental health issues because of those endorphins, right? Like if I was sitting
Mm.
around like I think with the when I realized something was wrong was when I wasn't working out my senior year of college and I was just laying in bed all day until I had something to do.
Okay.
Like I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't like enjoying life, like going out exploring or anything. I would literally just sit in bed and wait until I had class or wait until um like my friends wanted to hang out, right?
Right.
Uh and that's a good thing and a bad thing because at like it made me understand like okay, this is like a super important part of my life and I don't need to do it, but like I really enjoy it and I want to. But at the same time it kind of was like, oh, I didn't take my mental health seriously until I was 23 years old because I just thought I could like if I was upset, I just go to the gym and like crush out some reps, you know?
Right.
Uh so it's good, but don't use it to like escape. Like seriously, take mental health seriously and like if you think something's wrong, don't just go see a therapist. Don't try to supplement with like alcohol or working out. Like don't attach your identity onto an entire thing because you're trying to avoid help. And
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with seeking help and nothing wrong uh with like asking people for resources, man. Like I brought up the fact that I did therapy for like over a year just in casual conversation and like I know that some people like it's taboo to talk about mental health. But like and I don't care if that makes people uncomfortable, right?
Mm.
Because at the end of the day for me, if I'm talking about it or like it comes up in conversation somehow and I like seriously like I'm not like sharing like, oh, like I was super depressed for 4 months of my life or blah blah, blah whatever. Um I'm just talking about like resources, right? And at the end
Right.
of the day, if there's a group of like 10 people I'm with and like something about therapy gets brought up, or something about the fact that like, oh hey, see this guy, like totally normal dude, like he's on medication for mental health issues, and I'm not like a crazy person.
Right.
Like there's a stigma with it, but I'm still employable. Like I have a great job. Like I still work out. I still have tons of friends. I still go out and do stuff all the time. Uh, and I don't think that I would be like the same person I am today without, like, I think in the past year I have been like my favorite person I have ever been, because I was able to kind of like not resolve my mental health issues, but like really just like take control of them, and I understand why they're working.
That's
So what I
awesome.
was saying is, if I'm bringing this up in a group of like 10 people, and if 9 of those people are like, weird, like weird, why do you bring that up, dude, whatever.
Right.
But if one person like reaches out, like I've had people reach out to me after and be like, hey man, like do you have any recommendations for therapists? I've been really struggling with this, or like how did you get started um with this? Like how do like I don't know, a lot of people don't even know where to start.
Mm.
And if I can help one person, like just by telling a story about that, like that is such a win in my book.
Oh
And I
yeah.
don't care if it's like off-putting to some people,
Right.
you
And
know?
yeah, for me, it's like for people who are off put by that, that just comes to me that this came from a background or like an environment where like,
Well, they're probably one of the ones that need therapy the most, honestly.
exactly, is what I was gonna say. I was like, that's yeah. So yeah, I also want to rope back a little bit to you working out, and like yeah, like I find the same thing is that working out for me is like it's an excellent way to vent negative emotions, especially like anger,
Yeah, and you
stuff.
lost a ton of weight. Hey, give it up for Christian, guys.
Thanks, dude.
Yeah. I remember
Um,
the first time I saw you after you lost like how much you lost, like over 100 pounds, right?
130.
Yeah, dude. I remember the first time after I saw you, I didn't even I was like, wait a second, like you're like Christian, right? Like
That's awesome,
I was like, we're at the right? Like yeah, I'm supposed to be hanging out with you.
dude.
That
That's
was
sick.
wild. Yeah.
Yeah, that's still, dude. Some people do take double takes where they actually
Yeah.
like I'll introduce like I'll not reintroduce, but like I'll just like see someone I haven't seen to in 3 years, that they'll look at me like, why are you acting like you know me? And then like they'll look back to like, oh shit. It's like that's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, you
But
should be super proud of yourself, man. That's something that like
thank you.
a lot of people will never be able to do in their lives, and like a lot of people don't have like the mental strength, or like like the physical strength to do. Like that's an
Thank
insane
you.
achievement, and you should be very proud of yourself.
Thank you for real. Um yeah, so yeah, working out is just like I feel like it's a great venting for like those negative emotions and those emotions that you feel like in your body, but it's one of those things where it's not like therapy where you get to the root of your emotional distress. So like, I'll speak for myself. Like, let's just say, like, Brady briefly mentioned that, at his first visit, he was just laying it all out. So like, he can get to work and work on his mental health. And for me, it was sort of the same way, but like, when you work out, you vent the emotions, but for me, you don't actually remedy the source. And I feel like in therapy, that's when you remedy the source. Like you get to the source of it so that that emotional scar stops generating those emotions, so you don't have to keep going to go and work out. And obviously,
So
there's
that's a really really good way to put it.
yeah,
Like working out can be like a band-aid to it,
mm,
but really like therapy is like, okay, hey, maybe we should do some surgery on this shit and like actually
exactly.
stitch it up and like try to get to the source of this, you know?
Oh yeah, and that's why I think that it's so funny because I remember I went to therapy because my mom just told me just like to go and try, and I was like, I have no idea what a therapist is going to do to help me. I was like, I don't need that. I'm
Yeah.
not the person who needs therapy, whatever that even meant to me then. I was like, I'm not the person who needs therapy. And so I go, and like my first therapist, she was a grad student, so it wasn't like the best help. But like my second therapist was someone who really got to know me or who really connected with me. And that's another thing that I
Yeah.
feel like if you're gonna go and see a therapist, the chances of you like hitting it off with your first therapist is probably not too high. But it is so worth it to find someone who you actually connect with, because obviously that's gonna make the difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's about having someone reflect to you the things that you're saying, and not in a friend being like roasting you for saying something dumb when you didn't realize it, but it's like someone who's reflecting stuff in a way it's like that's a really, not productive thought pattern. Where do you think that it comes from? And then you just work through
Yeah.
it. So yeah, like what you said is like, yeah, it's still taboo, unfortunately, to like talk it up. And obviously there's a boundary where it's like you're not going to want to talk about like how like you overdose because you backslid, at like a work meeting, but like you can, I think it's, to me personally, it's completely acceptable to at least tell somebody that, like you said, or at least sort of lob in their direction, like, I have resources available. If you want to talk to me about something like that, I take it seriously. So
Yeah.
that's why I appreciate you telling me about that so much. So unless you wanted to talk more about that in some regard, I was just gonna share something small. So keep going.
I had something to go off of on the therapy thing.
Go for it.
Yeah, a lot of people will give up because they won't match with their first therapist. I mean, I luckily was able to. Mine was very great, and they did like a screening for me beforehand, and then so I interviewed with like a therapist group, and I had interviewed with like the owner of it, and he matched me with someone that he thought I would be a good fit with. So I
Okay.
luckily was able to kind of get past that hurdle initially. But for a lot of people, it's not as easy,
Mm-hmm.
because they're just signing up for like a therapist, and they don't know what to look for. But I will say a lot of people also sometimes won't like being told what is wrong with them, and they're
Yeah.
like, oh no, that's not a problem. They're like, it kind of is,
Oh, I have stories for that too. If
you know.
we finish, because I was gonna,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
the
I
first,
well, I had something to say, but I forgot, so I said that instead. But
okay.
but
Um,
yeah, so you're good. Go ahead.
so yeah, my first like 2-3 months in therapy was me trying not to get chippy with my therapist, because I was like,
Really,
I was trying to do the same
the first
shit.
one.
Yeah, because I was like,
Yeah,
it was going down to shit like, you don't know me, like, how is that an issue? How is that my fault? And I was like, oh, like, I was slowly coming to terms. So if you're anything like me, like, I
yeah,
was getting super chippy in mine, like, not, I don't even know what it really was, but yeah. And also, if you're a college student, uh, school counseling is included in your tuition. So I would just go in YOLO and take like an hour out of your week and just take advantage of that, because I think with insurance, I think it's even around like, anywhere from like 80 to like $150 for a therapy appointment per week. So if you're in college, take advantage of that.
I at IU they gave us I think it was like 2 free sessions per semester,
Okay.
which isn't too much, but it's still enough of an introductory like reason to go see someone,
Oh yeah.
right? Like even if you only meet for 2 sessions, like you can still get a lot done in
Oh
two
yeah.
sessions. Yeah,
Yeah. Um, yeah. And even when it comes down to, if you just like speed ran it and you just like listed out all the bullshit that you've been through, like you said
yeah,
in your experience,
yeah.
that in
This
itself.
strat by the way saves about like 50 frames. You're gonna be on world record pace.
Yeah. So, and dude, when you were talking about how when you came back and you just had to like sit and stare for like 15 minutes, I know that feeling.
It's
Like,
real. It's real, dude. And I
yeah.
talked to my doctor about it. He's like, "Had your first?" Because I was working both with my doctor and my therapist, and he's like, "So, how'd your first like therapy session go?" I was like, "Well, I got home and I just stared at the wall for 30 minutes." And he's like, "Yeah, he's like, that's probably probably." He's like, "That's how you know it's working."
Yeah. No, like
'Cause you
actually.
really have to think. It's honestly rewiring your brain to think a different way.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I think also it's also like work, like low key. Like when you go there, you have to like set a certain intention about like what you want to like work out, or like what you want to like achieve. Because if you just go
yeah,
there and like you're like I was getting chippy with my first counselor, I was like, really, I was just playing it like, I was just talking my shit, and then she was mirroring back, and we
yeah,
weren't really getting anywhere. So it's important to be like, I'm going to therapy because of XYZ. I have these events from my like childhood that I think might pertain to it, and this is how it like directs my behavior today. Like
yeah.
those are like three things that I would say like that's probably really important to like go into with.
Yeah, and a lot of it too is like you can't just go in and sit down and be like, fix me, right?
Yeah.
Everybody wants, so this comes down to like, this ties into a lot of places in my life because I see it a lot with like the fitness industry, like as someone who like lifts pretty seriously and has been for like 7 or 8 years now, um, has gotten like deep into like that rabbit hole. Like mental health is another example. Like I wanted to just be like, okay, I'm gonna take this pill and I'm good. No, it's like it's a two-way street. You got to put in the effort. There's no magic pill for anything. Like you can't just go into a therapist's office, sit down, and be like, all right, what's wrong with me?
Right.
You got to contribute too. You have to share your life experiences, which sometimes is really hard. Like I never cried during mine, but I came pretty close sometimes, like recounting things that either even things that made me feel good. because there was a lot of times where I struggled with like self acceptance,
Okay.
and I had like crazy imposter syndrome, which also kind of fueled my like breakdown at work. Uh, but like, I just remember one time. I'm gonna share a nice story. All
Okay.
right. There was one time I did dance marathon at my college, which was like this charity. We raised money for a children's hospital, and at the end of every year, we would go to the tennis center at IU, and we would stand for 36 hours because we were standing for the kids who can't. Right. Uh, and I remember, even though I was like a part of the committee and like I did volunteered a lot of my time, I still felt like I wasn't really like integrated with that group. Like I always felt kind of on the outside, and that is by no means anyone's fault but my own. Because I was not. I was fully ingrained. Like these people, some of these people were like my family, and some of them are still my best friends today. It's just like your brain playing these tricks on you, especially before you understand that like you have something going on up there.
Right.
um but I'll never forget, so what we did is we would like take, it's 36 hours is a long time and you're awake the whole time.
Oh
uh
wow.
and I will never forget, we set up mailboxes and you could write letters to people. And I'll never forget, my mailbox was super full and I was like, what the fuck, I had an impact on this many people, and I still have every single note like in here in my drawer.
That's awesome.
Um, but God, there are like so many, and it was just people that I had met over the year, and then I stayed on the next year. But that first year was really eye opening for me because I felt super on the sidelines, like super like like insecure almost about myself. And all these people were writing such nice things like, hey, like you really encouraged me to get more involved because I saw like the effort you were putting in, or you really like bring like a good energy to the group, and I'm so happy that I met you, and like all these like super nice things that I would have never thought about myself.
Wow.
And like it was like a really eye-opening thing for me, where I understood that like, hey, maybe people do actually like me and I should stop like trying to isolate myself, you know?
That's really cool. I mean, thank you for sharing that story because that's a story that I feel like if were you in therapy at this point?
No, this is like, I was like 21 at this point, so that was like 2
Okay.
years before therapy.
Yeah, like in
But I shared it during therapy. That was one of the. That's why I brought it up, because that was one
okay.
of the times I almost cried in therapy. Was reminiscing on that time, because I was also going through a hard time when I started therapy, which is why I started in the first place. And then it kind of grounded me a little bit and like brought me
Okay.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think those even I think like before or after therapy, that's one of those experiences too where in therapy can help you contextualize and interpret those experiences because
Yeah.
not say this is not your experience, but let's just say you had like a different mindset about interpreting notes like that. You could have said something like, because like, I mean, I'll try to like create like a different scenario where someone said like someone wants to say these things because they want something from me, or someone feels bad for me
Yeah.
because that your
And
brain could have said these things.
I think too. Like again, don't want to blame all my problems on Hudson, but I feel like that's like a very Hudson mindset, because I
Which
feel
one?
like the thing like people are only gonna like reach out to you or talk to you if they want something from you.
Oh, right.
Yeah, because I mean, in my experience, like I'm still in contact with the people I want to be in contact with. But if someone's reaching out to me, they're usually trying to get something from me, stay at my apartment for free because they found out where I live in Chicago,
Yo,
or try to get me to fucking sell like Venmo or something, Venmo,
dude,
whatever
that's what
that
happened to
energy.
me multiple times. I'm like, really? Because I was like hyped. I was like, oh, this person reached out to me. They're like, hey, man, can I manage your? And I'm like, fuck.
Want to
So
manage your crypto portfolio?
yeah, I'm like, dude, I follow crypto Twitter. I'm good. Like, I don't need anyone.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So yeah. So anyway, but
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So I feel that, but that's the whole other thing that I kind of want to talk about is uh going back a little bit to like the highs and lows and stuff. Before this, we talked about like sacrificing our youth for like our careers. And you mentioned that you said that like before this, and if I could say it now, is that you said that like mental health I mean, you can talk a little bit about like what you thought about your career and like, or not your career as such, but like career and mental health and like how you compare the two.
Oh yeah, I completely forgot about that.
And the other thing, real quick, is that, and this is something that you can tie into it because I feel like if you don't do it, then I'll do it. Is that, uh, we talk about how like perfection doesn't exist back in like when we were playing RuneScape, like that
Yep.
high level maximum efficiency
Mhm.
doesn't exist, and the reason why is you said it perfectly is that at the end of the day is that like you're working with code, like very like static and discrete code that does not exist in real life,
Yeah,
and
there's like a static, like, or there's a finite amount of things that can come out of
yes,
this. Like there's a maximum, like for so if we're going to like skilling or whatever, there is a maximum amount that you can achieve doing certain things, right? Like you
right,
cannot achieve above this much, but in the real world, look at billionaires, right?
mm-hmm.
Like it's that kind of mindset
Right,
where um there's like no cap on how much wealth you can accrue in the world.
yep,
But like in this game, like there's like unless you're doing some like shady shit that is against the game rules, there's like a best money making method per hour.
right. Um, and just like last thing I want to say is that I had this experience losing weight. You had this experience gaining weight. Is that linear progression is basically the form. It's like another form of perfection, and
Yeah.
linear progression does not exist no matter what. And like maybe you can tie this into it. This can be the end of my little spiel, but like I had this conversation the other day about how when you get into the mindset of efficiency and when you're online and you see like Tony Robbins say this and like Gary Vee say that, like all these people who talk about like maximizing efficiency and productivity and all that stuff,
Yeah.
is that you get to a certain point where like there's a day where you don't want to do something or there's a day you don't feel at your best, and logically you say, well, if I just push myself I can accomplish this because I can just do it, like I can just bring myself to do it. But I like that's the sort of thing that leads you to burnout, and not only burnout but like just like completely wipe out. And like sometimes like when I hit like those sort of streaks when I was losing weight, it
Mhm.
was the roughest periods where I didn't lose weight after the fact was because I went so stringently or strictly on a certain leg of my weight loss journey where I like allowed myself no errors whatsoever, and I paid the price like
Yeah.
when I finally hit that point. So I don't know out of any of those that you want to go off on, but yeah.
Yeah, we can talk about what I was talking about with work. So I know like I don't know. I know a lot of people, especially our age, especially a lot of people that like we grew up with, have like this grind mentality. Like everything you do needs to be like you need to be taking it to the next level, right? Like you I don't know. You see these people on like social media, you see these influencers, and it seems like everything in their life is just like perfect. And like you'll see like Zuckerberg became like a billionaire at like 25 years old. Like I'm almost 26. That like I am nowhere near that, right?
Yeah.
Um, but you got to understand, like, he's not really doing anything except for like work for Facebook and then like putting on way too much sunscreen when he goes surfing. But oh, and overthrowing democracy.
Yeah, that
But
too.
he wanted to rate women in his class and ended up threatening the structural integrity of our democracy.
Yes.
Anyways, no, so I mean, it's just like I have this mindset. Like I put in the hours at my job. I work super hard. I make sure that I am like a valued team member. I do everything. But at the end of the day, like I like part of the reason why I work where I do is I have a great work-life balance. Like I put in like my 40 hours, sometimes 50 if it's like a stressful week, and I log off and I'm salaried. So if I work any more than that, like I'm making less money essentially. Like I'm not grinding to make like I don't know if I'm trying to think of how to word this, right? Because if
I
you're a
think what you
salaried
said makes
employee,
sense. Yeah.
yeah, and like at the end of the day too, I've come to this realization that um, you are expendable to wherever you're working, unless it's your own company, you're expendable, right?
Mm.
So my my dad, love him, God bless him. He is always trying to get me to take on jobs that like are very incremental pay increases, like very very small, but are going to have like 20 to 40 hour work week differences to where I'm being like super overworked and honestly, in my opinion, exploited. And I know people like love working these jobs. They love the hustle. They love the grind. But like I'm not exaggerating when I'd say I would rather kill myself than do that. I need to enjoy my time. I need to. I work. Well, I'm trying to get ahead of my career, obviously, but I can't get ahead of my career if I'm depressed as shit and don't want to even wake up in the morning, right? Like
Right.
I need to do things that I enjoy, man. And I use work as a way to like fund those things. Like I like traveling, I love traveling, like my gym membership. If I was working 80 hours a week, no fucking way in hell would I want to get up after work and take my ass to the gym.
Right.
It's not happening. And at that point I wouldn't be sleeping enough, so it would be even detrimental because I wouldn't be regaining the muscle, right?
Yeah.
Cuz sleep is a huge part of like overall health. But like I just think that like our not even our generation's starting to see it less, but the way that you used to get ahead would be you put in the hours, your company appreciates you, they promote you, and you work there for like life, right?
Right.
And I think our generation, are you Gen Z?
Uh, I am literally the first month of
96.
Gen Z, so no,
Okay, I'm
97.
I'm 95, so I'm a millennial, but like I'm like on the cusp, so it's like
Okay.
we're in that weird range.
Yeah.
But I I don't know, man. It's just that mentality used to maybe get you ahead, and like maybe at a smaller company, absolutely. But I
Mhm.
work at a huge company. And if I were to be doing that, yeah, it would get recognized, but they would also just be like, "Oh, thanks." Like you're providing them free labor in my opinion,
Yeah.
right? Uh so it's like I don't know. There's obviously a balance, right? There's no right or wrong answer for it, and every company culture is different. But a lot of the reason why I like where I work is because of the company culture and the work life balance.
Mhm.
And that to me is worth more than like an incremental increase at the expense of like all of my free time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. That's kind of what we talked about before, right?
Yeah. No, I think. Sorry, were you finished? I was gonna say something.
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, I completely agree, and that's the whole part about sacrificing your youth is like
Oh,
that's
sacrificing your youth. That was the point. Yeah.
yeah. No, I mean, I just want to like summarize and say that because that's people, come in that their parents are telling them something like that, where,
Mhm.
but you have to sort of take it like in a situational approach because that may not be the case, and things are
Yeah.
changing so often. Like I don't even like even people who think they understand the meta like last year. I feel like the meta's already changed in terms of like
Oh yeah.
driving up in the job world.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, and I think that the sacrificing your youth thing is what I think I want to tie back to what I said earlier about the whole logic versus like emotional and just letting yourself breathe sort of thing. Is that like you can not to say that you because again there's like a certain level of how hard you should work. You said like put in your
Yeah.
40-50 hours of like
Put
intentional
put it like
work.
put in the work and do a good job, but like
There's
you
it's self-sacrifice after a certain point,
yeah.
and it's still like a yeah. And so yeah, so
But
obviously there are such huh
if that's what you're into, like if that like I know people who are
right
very passionate about their work and that's what they like that's their hobby. Like they
right
like that. They love that and they don't get burnt out on that. And like
right
if that's you, great for you. You're going to get so fucking far in life.
mm-hmm.
But my work is not by any means my hobby. I was actually talking to Christian about this before the call about how I did kind of integrate a little bit. Like I'm in tech and I loved tech growing up. I was like the biggest fucking nerd. I loved everything technology wise. I always wanted to like experiment with all this new stuff. I don't want to touch that shit anymore as a hobby at all. I go to work for 8 hours and I close my laptop, I go home and I'm just like I don't want to sit back down and like analyze this shit again. Like that like I want to do something else. I need a break from that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I feel like there. I mean, I feel like mindfulness is starting to creep its way into like the normal like productivity because now people are talking about like because there was a point where like sleep it was totally overlooked. People were like, "Oh, you don't need sleep," and then people were like there was like research out that said like if you if you get less than like 6 hours of sleep, that's like equivalent of having like 2 beers like the entire day. Like you're like that
Yeah.
like inebriated or whatever. Maybe it was less than five or
Side
something.
note, side note, 2 beers is like the perfect amount of beers to have.
He's
Just
not wrong. Um, dude, I saw like a great meme about that earlier. It's funny. Um, and so yeah, like sleep is super important. So then people stopped like cutting back on sleep. So now it's like okay, make sure you get your 8 hours. But then now like meditation is like slowly creeping its way in there. It's like okay, well
right.
yeah, like now you do need to take time to like recalibrate at the end of the day. So I think that we talked about like a lot of like really cool things, and a lot of them we haven't touched on in depth in previous episodes. So, I would just like to say that I'm glad that you came on here and you shared a lot of your stories. And
Yeah, of course.
if is there anything that you want to plug, like social media accounts or something like that, on our way out?
If you just want to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, it's at B is for Brady. Put it in the description. I'm my Instagram I'm not really active on, but I do shit post a lot on Twitter and I'm
He
public.
does.
So if you want to retweet me, you can also retweet me. But yeah, I don't know. I just like try to make people laugh on social media, with an occasional political take, but that's usually only if something like horrible happens and I have very strong words about it.
Gotcha.
Um, yeah, that's pretty much it, man.
Okay.
Yo, hey guys, make sure Christian had me on here and he had to listen to me talk my ass off about like nothing for like 2 hours now. Make sure you follow him, turn on that bell button, like, comment, subscribe. Let's see if we can smash 50 likes on this video. Come on, 50 actually
50 of them.
dislikes because I'm on it. 50 dislikes, 50
No,
dislikes. Come
chill. We don't want that.
on.
Smash the subscribe button though, low key, because
Yeah, turn the bell on for notifications. Every time he posts, you'll get a push notification to your phone.
we all want those. We all want
It's
more of
only one,
those.
it's one a week. It's one a week.
It's
Do
just
it
one
for
a
your
week.
boy.
Yeah.
Once a week.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
If you made it this far, thanks for watching. Peace.
Wait, if you made it this far, you probably thought I was professional. Psych.